Welcome to the next lesson in the Sharp Academy, presented to you, of course, from the Sharp app. This is our sports betting education series course, if you will, maybe even a master class. And what we're going over today is part of our psychology aspect of sports betting, and that is the Gamblers Fallacy. You may have heard of it before. We're going to go into detail on exactly what the Gamblers Fallacy is, how you can be fooled by this, and maybe how you can use the Gambler's Fallacy in your favor. Firstly, Gambler's Fallacy, what is it? Well, it's when a gambler believes the outcome of a future event is somehow correlated to the outcomes of past events when the two are independent. The easiest way to see this is probably at a roulette table if you went to a casino anytime recently and you notice that they have a board that shows all the past 20 numbers that have come out on that particular wheel. Now, there's absolutely no reason you need to know what the past numbers were that have come out on that wheel. They're totally independent of what the next number or next color is going to be on that wheel. But the casino knows that the Gambler's Fallacy is something that's in all of our minds. We have that psychological notion that knowing what the past is, and if there's some sort of a streak on that wheel, then we have an edge by jumping over there and playing against that streak. So if you walked into a casino and you looked at a roulette table and 10 reds had hit in a row, you might be inclined to run over to that table and play black because it is due to hit black. When in reality, black hitting is still the same percentage as it was prior to the 10 spins of red. Here in the United States, most casinos are going to have two green numbers, a 0 and a 00, as well as 36 spots on the board. So there's 18 red and 18 black. So you're going to have 38 numbers, 18 out of 38 chance of hitting a red and 18 out of 38 chance of hitting a black. Those extra two green numbers, of course, is what the VIG is. That's the house edge. When you play red or black or odd or even, you are paying the house that VIG every time a green hits one of the zeros or 00. They're really playing on the average person's lack of knowledge of psychology and lack of knowledge of statistics when they post those numbers up on that board. And even me, I understand the statistics. I will see that. If I was playing at that roulette table, I would also have the feeling that, hey, there's been way too many reds come out in a row here. I want to play black. It's just innate within just about all of us. So think about yourself having gone to the casino, been in that situation. I'm sure we've all thought whatever it is due, whether it's 3, 4, 7s have come out in a row on the crap table, the red and black over on the roulette table, whatever the case may be, we always have this notion of there's been so many of this occurrence happen in a row that it's due to happen the opposite way. Now, the flip of that is some people will look and say, well, there's been a certain number of occurrences happen in a row. It's hot. Now, we don't usually do that for innate objects like dice or a marble rolling around on a roulette wheel or cards in a deck. But we do this in sports betting. Now, the same thing happens. It's the same Gambler's Fallacy, but it tends to be in reverse in sports betting, where we look at teams who are winning or a player being hot, maybe a player hitting a certain amount of three-pointers in a row, or a player on a hitting streak in baseball, or a team on a winning streak. We view those teams as hot, but that is also a misnomer. The teams are going to win at whatever percentage it is that they are going to win. So a 50% win team may go on a run of winning 3 or 4 games in a row, but that does not necessarily mean they are hot. It's just inevitable that a 50% win team is going to win 3 or 4 games over the course of, let's say, an NBA season of 80 games. Just like in baseball, if we're looking at a player who is a 300 hitter, they're going to have streaks where they get a hit in 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, but that never tells us if they're going to get a hit in the game 7. We know these hot streaks occur after they've occurred. So it's very hard to predict after game 2 or 3 whether or not we're in the midst of a long hitting streak, because the players are going to perform on average how they have performed historically. So just like the coin flip being 50-50, if you know a batter has 900, 1,000 at-bats plus in his career, and he's a 300 batting average hitter, and I know we don't use batting average all that much, but let's say he's a 300 hitter, and they've gone on a streak of 3-4 games in a row, the odds that they get a hit in their next game is going to be just the same as it was at the beginning of that stretch. Of course, we're going to take pitchers and whatnot into consideration, but just know that the fact that they had 4 games in a row of hits means nothing in game 5. Likewise, if a team is covered 3, 4, 5 games in a row in the NFL, that does not mean they are on some sort of a streak. And we know that game 6 now, they're hot. They've been covering X amount of games, that there's some sort of edge in game 6. It's still going to be a 50-50 proposition. If not, it may actually be less than 50-50 because the market on the whole tends to believe in streaks. We can actually take advantage by going against them on occasion because the price is going to be higher on a team that has now had consecutive wins against the point spread. The line is going to tend to be skewed in their favor, and thus we can fade those teams a lot of times. We're getting an edge maybe of a half point to a point in the NFL, or maybe even more in an NBA or college, whatever it may be. So be on the lookout for that. It's very hard for us to disassociate and disconnect and view this as being true, but there have been studies after studies that have shown hot streaks don't exist, or at least we can't predict them to ever happen until they've already happened. So an NBA player who shoots 40% from the three-point line, if he makes 5 in a row, the odds of him hitting that 6th one are about 40%. Even though coaches and players will say, hey, give the guy with the hot hand the ball. In our minds, right now we're thinking, yeah, but that guy's focused. He's laser focused right now. He's in that zone. We've all played sports, and we're like, I know when I'm doing really well, whether it was baseball, if I was hitting the ball really well, it just seemed like every pitch thrown to me, I was going to make a hit. I was going to have solid contact. When I play golf now, if you're putting really well, it just seems like every putt's going to go in. But you can never predict it until it's over. You are in the midst of a hot streak, and then you're not. So what happens, right? So we all look back on it. We're all fooled by it. Even the players themselves can get fooled into thinking that, because you'll go on a hot streak. You'll get, let's say, 6 games in a row with a hit. You feel really good. You've got a few home runs during that streak. Well, what happened in game 7? You went into game 7 thinking, man, I'm on a hot streak. And now game 7, you don't get a hit. Game 8, you don't get a hit. And game 9, you don't get a hit. Everything starts to revert back to the mean. What I want you to do is now think about the gambler's fallacy. Think about how you may be able to take advantage of it. All right, guys, I like to visualize things, show it in a spreadsheet so you can understand it even better. I've taken a spreadsheet here, and I'm kind of hiding most of it because I don't want either you guys or me really to see the entirety of this spreadsheet. What I've done on this sheet is randomize both heads and tails. What I've said is when the number 1 comes out on a randomized 1 or 2 in Excel, count that as a head. When the 2 comes out, count that as a tail. So it's a totally 50-50 random situation, just like a coin flip would be. And I've done this 500 times. So I did a 500 consecutive simulated coin flips. And we'll see how we do if we start getting in the field for, well, heads or tails have come out a lot of times in a row. How would you bet? Would you continue to just say this is a 50-50 proposition and bet any old way? Or are you going to start getting that feel, that urge to go against the streak? So I want you to see just how often these streaks can last and how often they don't. It should be about 50-50. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the page, and as you see, we just went from heads to tails. So what I did was refresh the page. I don't know the order by which these are going to come out. I can't see them as you can, so I'm looking at it here on the screen with you. The first flip was a tail, and I'm recording on the side. You'll see as we go how many consecutively of each head or tails comes out. So we then go from tails to heads. We get 1 consecutive heads. The next one was a tails, 1 consecutive tails, heads. So we're alternating right now. Now we have 2 heads in a row. So the inclination may be right now that you want to bet tails, because 2 heads in a row, maybe you're expecting a tails on the next one. You would have been right? So now tails, look at this. We get 2 tails in a row. Maybe now count just like you thought the run would end on heads. Maybe the run's going to end here on tails and we'll get a heads here. And we do. So right here, the Gamblers Fallacy is actually proving incorrect. So we've been able to bet against these little mini streaks right now. We're 2-0 in doing so. So let's see if we can get another streak going. All right, 2 tails. Now we've got that streak of 2 tails. Do we get a heads? We actually get 3 tails in a row. We're 2-1 betting against these little mini streaks. But certainly 3 tails in a row, we're going to want to bet heads because heads is due. And sure enough, we get tails. We're now 2-2 on that bet, but we could go ahead and keep betting heads, and we actually get another tail. So as you can see, we just don't know when these streaks are occurring until they actually occur. And we go to a 6th. So we're actually now in the negative here betting against these trends. Of course, if we keep doing it, we will eventually find a heads, and we do after the 7th flip here. We're back on a head streak. So now we go heads 2 times in a row, we get our tails. Now we get 2 tails, back to a head. Heads twice in a row, a tails. Tails twice in a row, a head. So it's kind of working pretty much way you would think, even though it doesn't always work that way. If you were actually writing these down instead of flipping a coin, a lot of people wouldn't do more than 2 or 3 heads or tails in a row. A professor will give you an assignment. They say, go home, flip a coin 200 times, write down all the outcomes. And those who actually do it will notice that they'll get a streak of 4, 5, 6 in a row of heads or tails. The ones who don't do the assignment and just write heads and tails will never do more than 2 or 3 in a row. And that's how the professor knows who actually flipped the coin and who didn't. It winds up being a good lesson to the students on just this fact. So again, we get heads, tails, heads, heads, and we go back to tails. So this actual random run is not working really well, but we're only 50 in. But you see how you can fall into that trap because we are accustomed to looking for patterns. We know that it's a 50-50 proposition. We get 2 heads in a row here. Boom, back to tails. 2 tails in a row. Now we lose the 3rd tail. And then back to a head. So here you see we get 3 heads in a row. Back to tails. Just the way this one is working out, we're not getting these long streaks. So now I'm not going to bore you and go through the 500, but I am going to go down to the end of this where I calculate just how many in a row we get. So in this one, we actually were 51.49 heads to tails, and our max run was 8, which is about what you would expect on a run on a flip of 500 coins. So if I just went and refreshed this again, now I had a max run of 9, and we actually had more tails. We had 53%, 47%, which also goes to show you 500, we know heads and tails, we know this is a 50-50 proposition, but even over 500 coin flips, we may not be exactly at 50%. This should also show you that sometimes you are going to be misled into thinking perhaps you've got some great system if it's picking, say, 53%, 54% on 50-50 propositions over 500 games. That's actually not enough to prove that you actually have built something that's profitable. So when you're building models and you're looking at past trends, you've got to keep that in mind as well, that it's probable that you'll have 53%. And then if you run this another 500 times, we'll get back closer to that 50% number. So if I run this a new 50%, of course we get 54% tails and 46%. If I run it again, we're at 51% tail, 49%. And then here you see now another 500 flips, and tails flips to 56.44. So it's not predictable as to if you had some sort of a model that was doing this. And again, now if you just started this model and you had 56% heads, which let's say those are wins, you would think, boy, I've really got something here. I've got over 500 games. I've got a really winnable system. But as we can tell, that can change at any time. Just like the next 500, you now are 49% success. All right, so hopefully you guys understand now what the Gambler's Fallacy is. You don't fall into that trap, and maybe even be able to take advantage of others who will fall into that trap, where you're going to find prices on players, whether it be props or games, where the line is going to move strictly based on what has happened in the recent history of that player or team. And you can take advantage of those misprices. So look for that. Try and get your brain thinking the opposite of maybe how it's always thought in the past. Train yourself to be counter to the Gambler's Fallacy and don't fall into that trap. We're going to get into more of these psychological aspects of sports betting in the future. Hopefully you could use this one to make yourself some money. Good luck. We'll be back with more educational videos in the near future. Stick with the Sharp app.